Well, if Donald Trump thought that the continued bashing of Chief Judge of the D.C. District Court, Jeb Boasberg, was going to have a positive effect for the administration, that he totally miscalculated. Because not only has Jeb Boasberg fired back with a new order today, finding the Trump administration woefully deficient in one of their submissions about the Venezuelan airplanes that took off after an injunction had already been entered by Jeb Boasberg, but he's also, the judge, entered an order to show cause requiring the Trump administration to explain to him why they are not in contempt. This, with additional reporting that, of course, the Trump administration, I guess, didn't realize that Jeb Boasberg was not a radical lefty, nor was he corrupt. He's a moderate Democrat who was appointed to his first federal bench position by a Republican and counts on his two fingers, two very good friends at the United States Supreme Court, one being Chief Justice Roberts and the other one being Brett Kavanaugh, who he roomed with, he was a roommate of during law school. And yet we continue with the bashing and the attempt to try to impeach and intimidate Jeb Boasberg. I'm going to continue to follow it, this fast-moving story, as we lurch towards a constitutional crisis right here on Legal AF. How did we get here? It's only been about 72 hours. Well, Donald Trump decided he was going to draw a line in the sand and go after a judge in particular and dox him and bash him and have everybody in his administration do the same, because he doesn't like the fact that a temporary restraining order, and there's been about 60 of them entered against the administration in the first 60 days. Doesn't like this particular one because it stops him from exercising phony war powers by declaring a phony war that only Congress can do against Venezuela in order to use the Alien Enemies Act to deport 14-year-old and other Venezuelans who are undocumented, some of which are gang members, I presume, and send them off in the middle of the night in civilian aircraft to a terrible, high security prison in the jungles of El Salvador. And didn't like the fact that Jeb Boasberg said, yeah, I think that's unconstitutional exercise of the Alien Enemies Act during peacetime, and I'm going to enter the injunction. And what happened next is that Donald Trump, as we've seen time and time again, is openly defying federal judge orders. There's no other way to put it. Tom Homan, who's the border czar, said, quote, "I don't care what federal judges have to say. I'm going to continue to deport people regardless of their orders." Then you have Carolyn Levitt, the press secretary. She gets up there and she looks everybody in the eye 2 days ago and calls Jeb Boasberg out by name and says that he's corrupt, a lefty, and he's standing in the way illegally without jurisdiction of an order of the executive branch. Which again not begs the question, but I have to question, does she understand how the co-equal branches of government works and how separation of powers and the checks and balance system works? Because that is the role of a federal judge, one single federal judge in one single federal district. That's how that works until you get up to the United States Supreme Court. So we had all of that. It got so fevered and bad that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court had to wake up, step off the bench, and expend some political capital of his own. Very unusual. I can't remember any example of this in over 100 years. And issue a statement which was a rebuke of Donald Trump directly. He said, in 200 years of precedent, if you don't like a judge's decision, you appeal, you don't impeach. In other words, pump the brakes, Trump, and back the Legal AF up. Okay, and knock it off. Trump got the message, but acted like it wasn't directed to him when he went on Laura Ingraham on Fox. Oh, was he talking to me? He didn't mention me by name. It happened so quickly. I really don't know. But, it is a corrupt judge. It is a lefty. It is somebody who is rogue. So he did it again, which was a signal back to John Roberts that Donald Trump can't be controlled. It was like a mafia. It was like the Godfather movie. It was like a fish wrapped in newspaper sent to John Roberts. I can't be stopped. And all this is going on in the background with Pam Bondi, the Attorney General under the Department of Justice, her saying the same thing. Rogue, unconstitutional exercise of jurisdiction by a federal judge. This is their MO. This is their blueprint. Then they activate the sleeper cell within the White House of the rapid response team, which they use their social media platform, and then all their paid influencers, and then Stephen Miller, who's the deputy chief of staff, White House chief of staff, and then Elon Musk, and then did I mention the paid influencers? And then they go crazy and they create this ecosystem of echo chamber stuff. And then Donald Trump says, "See, it's not just me talking about it. Look at all these other people that I paid for to talk about it, who are talking about it." And all this is going on, and all it's doing is escalating attacks on federal judges who have come forward and said, "We are worried, we are scared." They're supposed to be independent federal judges for life who are not supposed to show fear or favor to anyone that's in front of them. Check out the statute of Lady Justice. Justice is supposed to be blind, right? Literally with a blindfold, with equal balance scales of justice. That is supposed to be our justice system. And Donald Trump wants to warp that and corrupt that. So he's picked on the wrong judge. So you'd think some of the judges, and you can question whether Judge Merchan, the New York State Supreme Court justice who was responsible for presiding over the 34-count felony conviction, whether he sort of lost a little oomph, a little confidence, a little pep in his step towards the end there when he, after the jury convicted him, he actually suspended the sentence and didn't send Donald Trump to jail or even sentence him to probation. He'd been bashed. His wife had been bashed. His daughter had been bashed. Courtroom personnel had been bashed. He might have just gotten a little bit tired, a little bit fatigued, a little bit worried, and let that creep into his decision making. That's my opinion in watching it. Jeb Boasberg, different cat. Do you pick the wrong judge to pick on than Jeb Boasberg? Now, Jeb Boasberg, so everybody knows, also when he's the chief judge. So during the second half of the prosecutions against Donald Trump that were in D.C. and in Mar-a-Lago, he was responsible for presiding over the grand juries. That led to, a number of things happening. Mike Pence testifying against Donald Trump. That's under Boasberg and decisions that he's made and other things. And I'm sure that's stuck in Donald Trump's craw. And he purposely, knowing Jeb Boasberg was responsible for presiding over some of the proceedings in his criminal matter, decided to get back at him and figured I'll just keep using a fire hose of defamation and being, scandalous about the judge. And let's see what happens. It's literally like a child pushing a button and wondering what this button's connected to. What'll happen now? Yeah. But I guess he forgot or nobody did research over there because they've got these half-wits in their legal department at the White House and in the Justice Department. And nobody did the research to figure out, maybe Jeb Boasberg's pretty well respected. And that's the reason he's the chief judge and took over for Beryl Howell. Maybe he was Kavanaugh's roommate in law school. Maybe he was appointed to some high positions, including the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, the FISA court by Chief Justice Roberts. Maybe that's not the one to go after. Nope, because Donald Trump knows no boundaries. So now we've got the new order. And in the new order, Donald Trump was given until yesterday to submit a declaration outlining why and how the planes took off after the injunction was issued, telling them to turn the planes around. And they said, we are going to maybe invoke the state secrets doctrine and privilege. And the judge said, I don't see how that's applicable. It's a privilege that comes out of a 1953 case of the United States Supreme Court called U.S. versus Reynolds. And it has to do with when somebody's suing the government, but in order to prosecute their case, they need to refer to some sort of state secret or something about national security. Government swoops in, intervenes, declares state secrets. Judges usually defer to that, and the case kind of disappears. That's different than a federal judge with a top classified security clearance asking for information about flights to determine whether his injunction's been violated. But at Donald Trump, it's like they're scrambling. What kind of privilege can we do? So they put up this deputy field director for ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement in Texas, to submit a declaration to the judge asking for more time and saying that he was aware, he wasn't involved with it, but he was aware of other people unnamed in the cabinet of Trump who may be deliberating about whether to exercise the state secret privilege or not, and they need more time. And the judge said, okay, that is, first of all, it was filed late. You guys asked me for another 24 hours. I gave you another 24 hours, and then you gave me a woefully deficient for the second time submission, where he just repeated what I already rejected, which was, we flew the planes. We didn't fly any planes after 7:25 when your order was in writing on the docket. But that's not when the injunction went into effect. The injunction went into effect during the hearing on Saturday night at about 6:20 or 6:30 p.m. And planes went out after that. And the judge wants to figure out why. After he said, get on the phone and stop those planes. And so you have a whole bunch of make weight, no real merit to the argument by somebody who doesn't even have the proper knowledge. It's all hearsay. And the judge spotted it. So now he's issued his order today. And he said, you gave me an insufficient, woefully deficient declaration of somebody who doesn't have precipient knowledge or factual knowledge, referring to what he thinks other unnamed cabinet members may be deliberating, and he wasn't even in the room. Okay, I want another declaration by tomorrow. I mean, literally tomorrow, by Friday, by 10 a.m. of the right person in the cabinet about whether they're really deliberating, whether to assert the state secret privilege, a privilege I've told you I don't think applies. Then, if I want that by then on the 25th of March, the judge went on to order, I want you to supply me with a response. I want you to show cause why the planes that went out after my injunction don't violate my injunction. In other words, order to show cause why you're not in contempt. That's the progressive discipline of a federal judge. And at the same time, I want you to also file, another brief on that very issue. At the same time, all that's going on, the underlying injunction is still being litigated in the same courtroom with the judge. There's going to be a hearing on Friday on that issue tomorrow. So there's a lot going on in this moving part. But again, if Trump thought he was going to intimidate this judge, let me just read to you from a couple of parts of the order. It's a relatively short order, just came out today, so I wanted everybody to get on it here. So first, the judge Boasberg goes through sort of how we got here, which I've given you, including his skepticism about the applicability of the state secrets privilege. He said in an ex parte pleading delivered shortly after today's deadline, shortly after the deadline, nothing like missing a federal judge's deadline. And an ex parte pleading, it means in this context, I didn't ask for this pleading. I didn't ask for this piece of paper. It's irregular. It's out of form. And you didn't ask me for permission to file it. So it's ex parte. So the government submitted, according to the judge, a 6-paragraph declaration from the acting field office director for enforcement and removal operations of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Harlingen, Texas field office. Where'd they find this guy? I mean, I know, Harlingen, Texas field office, but the contents of which the government said that I can disclose as a judge. He then goes through, he says the first 4 paragraphs is just identifying information, like who the guy is. He said, then he just repeats what I already rejected as being insufficient about when the flights took off. Then the judge gets really pissed off. He says on page 2 of his order that the declarant, this person that wrote the declaration or signed it anyway, says, I understand that cabinet secretaries are currently actively considering whether to invoke the state secrets privilege over the other facts requested by the court's order. Doing so is a serious matter. It takes a minute. It requires careful consideration of national security and foreign relations. It can't be undertaken in just 24 hours. The judge then declares that woefully insufficient. Like, don't come into my courtroom and give me a regional ICE official's attestation about cabinet level positions and discussions that he is not involved with that are based on his understanding. It is the very definition of hearsay. So the judge wants, here's the order. In addition to order to avoid further delay, the court will require defendants, that's the Trump administration, to show cause on the facts they've already disclosed as to why the failure to return the class members, that's the Venezuelans, aboard the 2 earliest planes did not violate the court's temporary restraining order. You sent them there. Why didn't you take them back? And I may need further facts. So again, here's on the last page, page 3, 10 o'clock tomorrow, March 21, defendant shall submit a sworn declaration by a person with direct involvement in the cabinet level discussions regarding invocation of the state secrets privilege, which he's already said he doesn't see apply. 4 days later, he wants a declaration about whether they're invoking the privilege and why. And also on that day, he wants a brief on the order to show cause as to why they're not in violation of his order by not having those planes turn around. What's going to happen next? The D.C. Court of Appeals has already ruled by not ruling. They have not stayed any of this. They're letting it all play out. The Supreme Court has not intervened either, other than Chief Justice Roberts issuing that quite unusual historic statement, a direct attack or criticism of Donald Trump to knock it off on his attacks to Boasberg. And Boasberg doing what federal judges do best, fact-finding, applying the law, reviewing the Constitution against somebody's acts and actions, especially somebody named the President of the United States, finding people in contempt and using order to show causes to do it. We're going to continue to follow this constitutional crisis of Donald Trump's own making and his miscalculation, and how that also ends up hurting him at the United States Supreme Court, because I think he's in danger of losing both Roberts and Kavanaugh as reliable votes for his policies. I'll cover it all right here on Legal AF. Take a moment, hit the free subscribe button. Help us continue to grow this pro-democracy channel. Till my next reporting, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states, and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.